Welcome to the History American podcast. We explore the stories that transformed the opinions of our citizens and shaped our collective memory. Here, we don't just narrate the past. We analyze and focus on the events that live on in the mind of America. A journey to the heart of the facts that defined us.
Welcome to the History American podcast. We explore the stories that transformed the opinions of our citizens and shaped our collective memory. Here, we don't just narrate the past. We analyze and focus on the events that live on in the mind of America. A journey to the heart of the facts that defined us.
It is a journey that often takes us into the darker corners of that collective memory. And today, we are looking at a story that arguably serves as the definitive end to an era.
That is no exaggeration. We are doing a deep dive today into Charles Mills Manson and the so-called Manson family. And looking at the stack of sources we have here, detailed timelines, biographical data, and cultural analysis, it is clear that this isn't just a true crime story.
No, absolutely not. It's much bigger than that.
It's a cultural pivot point. You see, historians, like Joan Didion, for instance, cite the events of August 1969 as the exact moment the 1960s ended. The moment the summer of love curdled into paranoia.
That's the critical context here. We're looking at a man who spent half his life in correctional institutions before emerging into the Haight-Ashbury scene. He wasn't a hippie, really. He was a predator who camouflaged himself as a guru.
Right.
He was a failed musician and a manipulator who used very specific psychological techniques, some learned in prison, to orchestrate these brutal crimes without ever dirtying his own habits.
And that's our mission for this deep dive. We aren't here to glorify the violence. We want to understand the mechanics of that manipulation. How did a petty criminal convince middle-class kids to commit murder?
Yeah, what was the mechanism?
We need to unpack the Helter Skelter ideology and walk through the factual timeline of those horrific nights in 1969.
And to really understand the end, we have to start at the beginning. And in the case of Charles Mills Manson, the beginning is just a masterclass in trauma and neglect.
It really is. Let's look at the origins. He was born Charles Mills Maddox on November 12, 1934 in Cincinnati, Ohio. And his mother, Kathleen Maddox, was only 16 years old at the time.
Just a child herself, really. And the reports describe Kathleen Maddox as an alcoholic, and by some accounts, a prostitute. His biological father was identified as a Colonel Walker Scott, but it's likely Charles Mills Manson never even met him.
So he gets the surname Manson from his stepfather, William Manson.
Correct. But that stability, if you can even call it that, didn't last.
No. But the instability started almost immediately. There is this one specific anecdote that pops up in the research that it floors me every time I read it. It's the pitcher of beer incident.
It is a devastating detail, isn't it? According to the accounts we have, his mother, Kathleen Maddox, actually sold him to a waitress.
For a pitcher of beer.
Pitcher of beer for her own child.
For a pitcher of beer. I mean, you can't even process that. His uncle actually had to go track him down days later and retrieve him.
What does that do to a child's psychology? To know your value is less than a drink.
It sets a psychological baseline that is almost impossible to recover from. It's the ultimate rejection. It tells you that you are not a person, you are a commodity. And it didn't get better. In 1939, when he's just 5 years old, Kathleen Maddox and her brother are in prison for robbing a service station.
Right, so he gets passed around, first to relatives in West Virginia, aunts, uncles, and eventually he lands in the system, the Gabalt School for Boys in Indiana. It's a classic trajectory for a neglected child.
And you see this pattern of rejection continue. There's an account of him escaping the Gabalt school and finding his mother, trying to return to her.
And she rejected him. Again, told him she didn't want him. So by the time he hits adolescence, the die is pretty much cast. He has no foundation, no sense of self-worth outside of what he can take from others.
Which leads directly to a life of crime. His juvenile record starts at age 13 with an armed robbery of a grocery store. And from there, it's just a revolving door of reformatories and escapes.
It's a constant cycle. He's in and out, in and out. The reports show that by 1967, when he's 32 years old, Charles Mills Manson has spent half his life in institutions, 16 years.
Now, this is where it gets fascinating and terrifying. Prison wasn't just dead time for Charles Mills Manson. It was his university.
That's a perfect way to put it. This is what stuck out to me in the research, too. He wasn't just doing time. He was learning. He was honing his skills.
His skills of manipulation.
Exactly. He was educating himself. The sources point out that he studied Dale Carnegie's famous book, How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Which is just... the irony is staggering. It's a book for salesmen or, corporate managers.
Precisely. But Charles Mills Manson read it as a manual for dominance. He learned how to mirror people, how to find their weaknesses, how to tell them exactly what they wanted to hear to get what he wanted.
And it wasn't just Carnegie, was it?
Oh no. He dove into everything. He got deep into Scientology for a while, studied its techniques for auditing and controlling people. He read esoteric philosophy. He was building this toolkit piece by piece to dismantle people's defenses.
And at the same time, he's learning music. He picks up the guitar in prison. He starts writing songs. He had these legitimate artistic ambitions.
He did. He saw music as another tool, another way to influence people. And then in 1967, he's up for release. And this is the wildest part. He actually requested to stay in prison.
I saw that. He told the warden prison was the only home he knew. He was afraid of the outside world.
Can you imagine? But they let him out anyway. He walks out of a cage at age 32 and directly into the summer of love in San Francisco. It's like releasing a wolf into a flock of very confused, very docile sheep.
That analogy is apt. He moves straight to the Haight-Ashbury district. I mean, this was the epicenter of the hippie movement. You have thousands of young, drifting individuals looking for direction, looking for belonging.
And looking for a father figure or a guru.
Often, yes. And Charles Mills Manson stepped right into that role. He positioned himself as this all-knowing guru. They had a nickname for him, didn't they? The Magus.
The Magus, yes. The magician. And he specifically targeted a certain type of person, largely young, middle-class women who felt alienated from their families.
Let's talk about that recruitment. It started with Mary Brenner, right? She was the first.
Yes. Mary Brenner was a librarian assistant at UC Berkeley. A totally normal life on the surface. Charles Mills Manson moves in with her, and she basically becomes the first convert. They eventually had a son together.
And from there, he just starts collecting people. He brings in Lynette Squeaky whom he found in Venice Beach, Patricia Krenwinkle, who was a secretary, Susan Atkins, who was already a drifting delinquent.
And what you see is he used the cultural tools of the time against them. He took the concept of free love, which was supposed to be about liberation, and he turned it into a tool of control to build what was essentially a harem.
But it was more than just sex, wasn't it? It was a calculated psychological breakdown.
Oh, absolutely. It wasn't just free love. He used sex and drugs, specifically high doses of LSD, to dissolve their egos, to break them down. If you take enough acid and have someone constantly lecturing you while you're in that vulnerable state,
telling you that your past doesn't matter, that your parents lied to you, that he is the only truth,
you eventually surrender your identity. Your sense of self dissolves and gets replaced by the group's identity, which was his identity.
So he builds this family. They get a bus, a black-painted school bus they call Hollywood Film Productions, which is another one of those weird details. And they start touring. And this is where the story intersects with Hollywood in a way that feels almost scripted.
The Dennis Wilson connection.
The drummer for the Beach Boys, it's just wild to think about. The story is that some of the family members were hitchhiking, and they get picked up by Dennis Wilson.
Yeah, and soon after, the entire family moves in with him. They literally took over his home on Sunset Boulevard. They cost Dennis Wilson a fortune. We're talking over $100,000 in today's money and food, medical bills for their STDs, damage to his property.
But Dennis Wilson was fascinated by Charles Mills Manson, wasn't he? He saw him as this raw, authentic talent.
He did for a while.
Yeah.
But that relationship soured over the very thing that connected them, music.
Right. Charles Mills Manson wrote a song called Cease to Exist.
And the Beach Boys actually recorded it for their 2020 album. But they made some crucial changes. They changed the lyrics, they changed the title to Never Learn Not to Love. And this is the most important part, they didn't credit Charles Mills Manson.
That must have enraged him. For someone with his ego, to have his art stolen and altered.
It caused significant resentment. It was another rejection from the establishment he so desperately wanted to be a part of. But through Dennis Wilson, Charles Mills Manson met an even bigger fish. Terry Melcher.
Your record producer. And Doris Day's son. A huge figure in the music industry at the time.
Correct. And Terry Melcher actually considered recording Charles Mills Manson. He went to their commune, he listened to them play, he gave Manson some hope, but ultimately he rejected him. He didn't sign him.
And that rejection is key, isn't it? Because of where Terry Melcher lived at the time.
It is the hinge upon which the entire tragedy turns. But before we get to the violence, we have to look at where they finally settled, the Spahn Ranch.
This place sounds like something out of a horror movie. An old, dilapidated movie set in the hills outside LA.
Owned by George Spahn, an elderly, nearly blind man. And Charles Mills Manson, ever the manipulator, cuts a deal. The family could stay there, live on the ranch, in exchange for labor.
And sexual favors. The female members were essentially given to George Spahn to keep him happy.
Yes. It was a gruesome, squalid existence. They were dumpster diving for food. They were consuming massive amounts of LSD on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And every night, Charles Mills Manson would hold court, he would lecture them, he would interpret the Bible, and he would interpret music.
Which brings us to the ideology, the motive, Helter Skelter.
This is where the delusion really crystallizes and becomes dangerous. Charles Mills Manson was obsessed with the Beatles, specifically their 1968 double album, The White Album. He believed the band was speaking directly to him, that they were prophets.
It sounds completely insane, but let's break down how he saw it. He thought the song Helter Skelter wasn't about a playground slide or just chaos, as the British term implies.
No. To him, Helter Skelter was the literal name of an upcoming apocalyptic racial war. He would play these songs over and over, dissecting the lyrics for his followers.
He looked at piggies
And said it described the establishment, the wealthy white people who lived in these fancy houses. The pigs.
Blackbird, he interpreted as a call for black people to rise up against their oppressors.
Right. Blackbird singing in the dead of night, take these broken wings and learn to fly. He saw it all as code. And he tied this into the Bible, specifically the book of Revelation.
Revelation 9.
Mm-hmm. He connected biblical prophecy to the Beatles and, of course, to himself. He convinced these kids that a massive war was coming, where Black America would rise up and slaughter the white establishment.
And what was the family's role in this supposed war?
Survival and then domination. Charles Mills Manson predicted they would escape the chaos by hiding in a bottomless pit, which he thought was a system of caves out in Death Valley. They would wait out the war there.
And then what?
Well, this is where it reveals Charles Mills Manson's profound racism. He believed that the victors, whom he identified as black people, would be unable to rule themselves, that they would be lost without the white man to guide them. And so they would eventually turn to him, to Charles Mills Manson and his family, to emerge from the pit and lead the New World Order.
So he's the Messiah waiting in the wings. But the war didn't start, did it? The summer of 68, 69. Nothing happened.
No, the prophecy wasn't coming true. And that's when the shift to violence happened. When the apocalypse didn't arrive on schedule, Charles Mills Manson decided he had to ignite it.
He had to start the war himself.
Exactly. The plan was terrifyingly simple in its conception. They would commit gruesome, shocking murders in upscale white neighborhoods. Then, they would stage the crime scenes to look like they were committed by black militant groups.
Specifically the Black Panthers.
Yes. The idea was to trigger a massive white backlash, a panic that would escalate into the race war he prophesied. It was a false flag operation born from his twisted mind.
A catalyst for Armageddon.
A catalyst.
So let's move into that summer of 1969.
Before we get there, we want to remind you that if you are enjoying this deep dive into history, please consider supporting us through the PayPal link found in the description. Your support helps us keep the lights on and the research flowing.
Indeed. We will be right back with the siege. The violence actually begins before the infamous Tate murders with a man named Gary Hinman.
That's right, in late July. Gary Hinman was a musician and a chemistry PhD student, an acquaintance of the family. Charles Mills Manson believed Gary Hinman had inherited some money.
And he wanted it.
He sent family member Bobby Beausoleil, along with Susan Atkins and Mary Brenner, to get it. It turned into a hostage situation that lasted for days.
And Charles Mills Manson himself was there at one point, wasn't he?
Briefly, yes. He came to the house with a sword, some reports say a samurai sword, and in a moment of rage, sliced off part of Gary Hinman's ear. Then he just left. He let the others finish it.
And Bobby Beausoleil eventually stabbed Gary Hinman to death. But here is the crucial detail, the first real sign of the plan in action.
The message on the wall. They wrote, "Political Piggy," and drew a Black Panther paw print symbol in Gary Hinman's blood.
They were already planting the evidence, testing the waters for framing the Panthers.
Exactly. But Bobby Beausoleil made a mistake. He was caught a few days later driving Gary Hinman's car. The police found the murder weapon. And Charles Mills Manson felt the heat. He was afraid Bobby Beausoleil would talk.
So he felt he needed to do something bigger, something more shocking, to create chaos and maybe even get Bobby Beausoleil off the hook by showing it was a pattern of Panther activity.
That's the theory, to really kickstart Helter Skelter.
Which leads us to the night of August 8th, 1969, the night of the Tate murders.
The target was a house, Funtour to 50 CeeLo Drive in Benedict Canyon.
And this was the house that Terry Melcher, the producer who rejected him, used to rent.
Yes, this is critical. Charles Mills Manson knew Terry Melcher wasn't there anymore. He knew it was occupied by the film director Roman Polanski and his wife, the actress Sharon Tate. But the house itself was the symbol. It symbolized the entire Hollywood establishment that had shut him out.
So who did he send?
He sent his most loyal followers, his chief executioner, Charles Tex Watson, and with him, Susan Atkins, Patricia Krenwinkel, and Linda Kasabian, who acted as the driver and lookout.
And Charles Mills Manson himself did not go.
No. He gave the orders from the ranch. He told them to go to that house and to totally destroy everyone in it, as gruesome as possible, and to leave a sign. Something witchy was the phrase he used.
The brutality of what happened that night it's almost impossible to comprehend. The reports are just horrific. The victims weren't just killed, they were slaughtered.
It was absolute overkill, pure, unadulterated rage. And it started before they even got in the house. You had Stephen Earl Parent, an 18-year-old kid who was just visiting the property's caretaker. He was driving away.
Just in the wrong place at the wrong time.
The absolute wrong place. Charles Tex Watson shot him dead in his car before he even knew what was happening.
And then inside, Sharon Tate.
Sharon Tate was 26 years old and 8.5 months pregnant. The accounts say she pleaded for the life of her unborn child. She was stabbed 16 times.
And the others. Jay Sebring, the famous celebrity hairstylist.
Shot and then stabbed 7 times. Abigail Ann Folger, the coffee heiress, was stabbed 28 times. And her boyfriend, Wojciech Frykowski. He was stabbed 51 times, shot twice, and bludgeoned over the head 13 times.
51 times. That's not just murder, that's a frenzy. It's a complete loss of control.
It's ritualistic, and then the message. Following Manson's orders, Susan Atkins took a towel, dipped it in Sharon Tate's blood, and wrote the word pig on the front door.
The news of this just sent a shockwave of terror through Los Angeles. But Charles Mills Manson wasn't done. He wasn't satisfied.
Which is, I think, one of the most chilling insights into his mind. He wasn't satisfied with the messiness of the Tate murders. He thought his followers had been sloppy, panicked. So he told the group he had to go out with them the next night to show them how to do it properly.
So the very next night, August 9th, he gets in the car with them.
He does. He's with Charles Tex Watson, Susan Atkins, Patricia Krenwinkel, Leslie Van Houten, and Linda Kasabian again. They drive around for hours just hunting, looking for a target. They eventually settle on the Los Feliz home of Leno LaBianca and his wife, Rosemary LaBianca.
Leno LaBianca was a grocery store chain executive, just a random successful couple.
Completely random. And this time, Charles Mills Manson goes in. He enters the house alone with a gun. He finds Leno LaBianca sleeping on the couch, wakes him up.
And he ties them up.
He ties up the couple with leather thongs. He assures them they won't be hurt, that it's just a robbery. He puts pillowcases over their heads. And then, once the scene is set and the victims are helpless, he walks out.
He leaves.
He leaves. He gets back to the car, sends Charles Tex Watson, Patricia Krenwinkel, and Leslie Van Houten inside, and orders them to kill the couple.
So he sets the stage and leaves before the curtain drops. He's the director, not the actor.
It creates a layer of legal and psychological separation for him, but it's a clear demonstration of his absolute control.
The brutality was repeated.
If anything, it was worse. Leno LaBianca was stabbed multiple times with a bayonet. They carved the word war into his abdomen. And they left a carving fork sticking out of his stomach.
Oh, God.
Rosemary LaBianca was stabbed 41 times, long after she was dead.
And the messages on the walls, this time they were more explicit.
Much more. Written in Leno LaBianca's blood on the walls and the refrigerator, "Death to pigs, rise." And on the fridge door, the misspelled name of his own prophecy, Helter Skelter.
They spelled it H-E-A-L-T-E-R.
A gruesome, revealing error in the middle of all that carnage.
I want to take a moment here to pause. We are deep in the darkness of this story, and there is more to come regarding the investigation, the trial, and the aftermath. But first, a quick reminder for you, the listener.
Yeah, these deep dives take a huge amount of research and time to put together. And if you value this kind of in-depth analysis and want to help us keep the lights on and the research flowing, you can support the show directly.
There is a PayPal link right in the episode description. Any contribution, big or small, really helps us dig deeper into these stories that shaped America. We really appreciate it.
Now let's get back to 1969, the aftermath of these 2 nights of terror.
The Los Angeles Police Department didn't connect the dots immediately, did they? You have the Hinman murder, then Tate, then LaBianca, all with writing in blood, all with this insane level of overkill stabbing.
It seems so obvious in hindsight, doesn't it? But at the time, there was just chaos and confusion. There were 2 separate investigations, the Tate case handled by LAPD robbery homicide, the LaBianca case by another division. They didn't link them at first. They certainly didn't link them to a hippie cult living out on an old movie ranch. The investigation completely stalled.
So how did it finally break? What was the thread they pulled?
Hubris.
Yeah.
And a big mouth. Specifically Susan Atkins' big mouth. She was arrested along with the rest of the family in a raid on the ranch in October, but on unrelated charges, grand theft auto, things like that. And while she was in jail, she started bragging. She bragged to her cellmates, telling them all the gory details about the Tate murders. She told them she's the one who killed Sharon Tate. She wanted the credit. She felt powerful.
And one of those cellmates talked to the police?
She did. And that was the door. That gave the police the thread they needed to unravel the whole sweater.
Which leads us to the trial, 1970 to 1971. Because if the murders were a horror movie, the trial was, by all accounts, a complete circus.
It was a spectacle unlike anything the American judicial system had ever seen. The prosecutor, Vincent Bugliosi, had this massive task. He had to prove that Charles Mills Manson, who didn't physically kill any of the Tate or LaBianca victims, was legally guilty of first-degree murder.
That's where the Helter Skelter motive becomes the entire foundation of the case.
It had to be. Vincent Bugliosi had to construct this complex narrative to explain the otherwise senseless violence. He had to show a jury that Charles Mills Manson was the puppet master, that he exerted such control over his followers that his words were as deadly as a knife.
And Charles Mills Manson, in court, he played the part of the madman perfectly.
Oh, he reveled in it.
What?
He tried to represent himself, which the judge denied. Early in the trial, he appeared in court having carved an X into his forehead.
He said it meant he had been X'd out of society, that he was no longer part of the establishment's world.
And, of course, his followers copied him. The female defendants in the courtroom, Susan Atkins, Patricia Krenwinkel, Leslie Van Houten, they carved X's into their foreheads too. Later, Charles Mills Manson modified his into a swastika.
And their behavior in court was just disruptive, doesn't even cover it?
No, they would disrupt the proceedings, they would sing and chant in Latin. At one point, they all shaved their heads in solidarity with Manson. It was pure theater.
And you had the rest of the family, the ones not on trial, camping outside the courthouse.
Exactly. Keeping a vigil. It was an act of intimidation, meant to unnerve the jury, the witnesses, everyone. And tragically, it may not have been an empty threat. Ronald Hughes, who was the defense attorney for Leslie Van Houten, went missing during a recess in the trial.
He was found dead months later.
Yes. The suspicion has always been that it was retaliation by the family, because he was seen as acting against Charles Mills Manson's interests in court.
So after all this chaos, the verdict finally came down on January 25, 1971.
Guilty. Charles Mills Manson, Susan Atkins, Patricia Krenwinkel, and Leslie Van Houten. All found guilty of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. Charles Tex Watson was convicted in a separate trial later that year.
And the sentence for all of them was death.
It was. They were all sent to death row at San Quentin. That seemed like the final chapter. But then, a major twist of legal fate occurred.
In 1972, the California Supreme Court, in a case called People v. Anderson, invalidated the state's death penalty, ruling it cruel and unusual punishment.
That's right. And that ruling automatically commuted the sentences of everyone on death row at the time, including Manson and his followers, to life in prison.
So they went from the gas chamber to life with the possibility of parole.
Exactly. Which is why we were still having parole hearings for them 50 years later.
Which brings us to the legacy. That phrase, the death of the 60s, it gets thrown around a lot, but in this case, it really feels accurate.
It holds water because the hippie movement was built on this foundation of utopian idealism. Peace, love, community, questioning authority. Charles Mills Manson took those same ingredients, communal living, free love, psychedelics, anti-establishment rhetoric, and he cooked up an absolute nightmare.
He weaponized their ideals.
He did. He showed the world that if you scratch the surface of peace and love, there might be a monster underneath. It shattered the innocence. People stopped picking up hitchhikers. People started locking their doors. The paranoia set in.
And pop culture just never let it go. Vincent Bugliosi's book, Helter Skelter, became a massive bestseller, defining the story for generations.
And the music connection continued in a very dark way. You had the band Guns N' Roses, at the height of their fame, cover a Manson song, Look at Your Game, Girl.
Which caused a huge controversy, as you can imagine.
And then, of course, the artist Marilyn Manson.
Right. Brian Warner took the name of the ultimate American sex symbol, Marilyn Monroe, and the ultimate American feel symbol, Charles Mills Manson, and mashed them together to create his persona. It just shows how Charles Mills Manson became a cultural shorthand for evil. Charles Mills Manson himself spent the rest of his life in prison. He was denied parole 12 times. But he didn't just disappear. He loved the attention.
Oh, he craved it. He would give these rambling, riddling interviews from prison, always trying to maintain that air of mystery and menace. And he still attracted followers, even from behind bars.
Which leads to that bizarre story about Afton star Elaine Burton.
Yeah, that was back in 2013, 2014. She's a 26-year-old woman who had been visiting him for years, ran websites supporting him. They actually obtained a marriage license.
But they never actually got married, did they?
No, the license expired. And reports later suggested that her motive was that she wanted the rights to his corpse after he died. The plan was supposedly to put it on display in a glass case, like a tourist attraction.
That is just. It's macabre. Even in his old age, the story around him remained fundamentally bizarre and exploitative.
He wasn't totally untouchable in prison, though. It's worth noting that in 1984, a fellow inmate, a Hare Krishna, poured paint thinner on him and set him on fire over a religious dispute.
He survived that with significant burns, but time eventually caught up with him.
It did. Charles Manson died on November 19, 2017, at a hospital in Bakersfield, California.
The cause of death was cardiac arrest and complications from colon cancer.
He was 83 years old.
And the others, the key players, what happened to them? Susan Atkins.
Susan Atkins, who bragged about killing Sharon Tate, died of brain cancer in prison in 2009. She had been denied parole 18 times.
Leslie Van Houten.
Now, this is a very recent and controversial development. After more than 20 denials, Leslie Van Houten, who was the youngest and seen by some as the most remorseful, was actually released on parole in July of 2023.
Wow, after more than 50 years. And Charles Tex Watson and Patricia Krenwinkel?
They both remain incarcerated. They've been denied parole numerous times and are still in prison today.
It's a story that just spans decades. From the Dust Bowl era trauma of his childhood, through the psychedelic 60s, the courtroom drama of the 70s, all the way to the 21st century.
And it leaves us with a very uncomfortable reflection, I think.
What's that?
We look at Charles Mills Manson and we see a monster, which he was, but we have to look at the mechanism. How did a man with so little, no formal education, no wealth, no political power, manage to weaponize the fundamental human desire for belonging?
He turned ordinary people who are looking for love and connection and answers, into brutal killers.
He did. And it forces you to ask the question, are we as susceptible to that kind of charismatic manipulation today as they were in 1969?
In an age of social media, algorithms, and echo chambers, I think that question is more relevant and more terrifying than ever.
It is.
A very sobering thought to end on. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
It was a difficult, but I think a necessary journey into a dark part of our history.
We hope this analysis gave you a clearer picture of the facts behind the myth. If you enjoyed this deep dive, please consider supporting the show via the PayPal link you'll find in the description. It truly helps us continue this work.
And don't forget to follow the podcast. We have many more stories that shape the American memory coming your way.
Until next time, goodbye.
Thank you for listening to this deep dive. We hope we helped you understand the complexity of those 51 days. If you value this analysis, please remember you can support us via the PayPal link in the description.
Your support allows us to keep digging into history.
Don't forget to follow the podcast for more deep dives into the events that defined us. Goodbye.